Hi there and welcome to another international webinar. Today we are going to be doing the Monday meetup, which is tuition fees and payments. I'm joined by a few special guests as well as a few Lakehead experts behind the scenes. We'll be chatting about tuition fees, how to make payments, how scholarships work, so much more. This is a part of the Lakehead International Live series, so that is a daily live series where Monday through Friday, I, as well as a few special guests, are live at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're chatting with current students, future students, faculty, staff, departments, all that sort of stuff to help you as our applicants and our prospects learn more about Lakehead and also answer some of your really important questions. Like I said, today we're going to dive into the tuition fees structure and making those payments. So I am joined by a few special guests. Patrick as well as Chris will be joining me. But first, to start off, my name is Jordan. I am the International New and Social Media Officer here at Lakehead University. What that means is I help with digital recruitment as well as our online efforts. So in a sense, I manage all of the online events and webinars. I also help manage social media and quite a bit more. But I'll pass it off to Patrick to give a brief introduction of what he does here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Carr. I am one of the international recruitment officers here at the university. I primarily work with students out of Africa, the Middle East, as well as the Caribbean, but I'm happy to answer questions on behalf of all of my colleagues who are spread out around the world. Happy to be here this morning and looking forward to our discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. And then I'll pass it off to Chris to introduce himself and chat about what he does here at Lakehead.
Thanks, Jordan. My name is Chris Gallinger. I'm the International Accounts Officer here at Lakehead. My job is to help international students do things like send payments from overseas to Lakehead University, to help you with a refund if there's a credit on your account for, let's say, an overpayment or you received a scholarship or a bursary. I'm also the administrator for the international health insurance plans here at Lakehead. So I definitely talk to a lot of students about UHIP and GuardMe. So student account, things like billing, if you have questions about the fees that are on your student account or what they are, how much they are. If you think if there's something you need explained, you can contact me to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'll chat about what we're going to cover today. Of course, this session is open to questions too, and we certainly want to hear your feedback and hear from you as the audience, so please submit those using the Q&A. But we're going to chat about academic expenses, tuition fees, all that sort of stuff. We're going to then dive into living expenses, exploring on-campus living, off-campus living, expenses just in a personal living aspect, so personal expenses, food, housing, that sort of stuff. Then we'll chat a bit about when and how to pay those fees that are associated with Lakehead University. We're also going to dive into scholarships a bit and how they appear in your account, how you use your scholarship to help pay for your fees, what that whole process looks like. As Chris mentioned, he's also the administrator for UHIP, so we're going to dive into the health insurance plan for our international students. And then we have a few tips at the very end, things to consider as we proceed through the application cycle. Of course, I have questions noted here because I certainly want to encourage questions from our audience. Things to remember throughout today's webinar, if you like what you see, don't worry. We do post the recording on our YouTube channel, and we also send out a link to that recording if you are on our mailing list. So our mailing list, every Friday or Saturday, will receive the following week's recordings as well as the next week's live event registration. So I certainly encourage you to check your emails on Fridays and Saturdays to check out that email from me and get a good idea of what's upcoming. We have some really great events coming up this week. And of course, for the following weeks, we have plenty more lined up too. Like I said, if you do have any questions, you can use the Q&A function to submit those questions and we'll be happy to address them. And last but not least, if you are on social media, if you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, if you're joining us from China and you're on Weibo, WeChat, Youku, we do have social media accounts for the international audience. And so those are tailored for your experience, of course. It's a great way to stay connected with us, get the sneak peek of Lakehead experience, but also get regular updates about future events like this one, or at least major announcements from the university itself. Otherwise, I'll dive into it here. We're going to start talking about academic expenses. So I'll pass it off to Chris to chat about the fee structure, the ancillary fees, books. And then I noticed that we have already started to receive some Q&A, so I'll start to look at those while Chris works through this slideshow.
Thank you. So this is a summary chart of your academic expenses at Lakehead there. You'll see the first column is undergraduate students. So this is students who are in an undergraduate program. Generally they go for 4 years. Graduate program is in the next column there. These fees are for academic years. So the undergraduate, that's from September to April. It doesn't include any spring or summer courses if they're taken. Graduate, it includes from September through to the end of August, which is 3 terms. So ancillary fees are fees that are in addition to the tuition. So there are ancillary fees such as athletics fees that deal with the capital, like the buildings on campus, maintenance, as well as gym membership fees. There's also the computer fee. There's other fees on there for health services that allow you access to the on-campus clinic. If you have questions about the fees, you're welcome to email me or check our website. Books, again, this is a good estimate, but books kind of vary depending on what program you're in, what year level you're in, whether you're buying digital or physical books. But this is a pretty good generalization of what the total expenses are going to be. One thing I'll say is that if you have questions about tuition fees and you know your specific program, our website is updated with the 2020 spring summer and 2020 and 2021 fall winter fees. So they are up there ready for you to check them out. So that's good, Jordan.
Awesome. So there are quite a few questions coming in, and I'm obviously happy to address those now. So I'll have the first question from Karan. Does Lakehead allow branch transfers from electronics and communications background in the undergrad to computer science and masters? So I just want to have that student actually clarify, are you referring to branch transfers as in paying for fees? Because I know that banking institutions refer to their different locations as branches, or are you referring to the actual structure of transferring programs or applying to a program? So I'll have that student resubmit that question just with that clarification, and then we'd be happy to answer that. The next question we have is, are there any plans for international students regarding fees and scholarships based on the current situation? So that's a great question. We actually have a very an amazing undergraduate scholarship program. I'll pass it off to Patrick to cover the undergraduate scholarship program because he definitely has some more background than I do on that. And then as we already covered the fees, those are the updated fees for this upcoming cycle already.
Thanks, Jordan. So yeah, as Jordan was saying, we here at Lakehead, we do have an amazing undergraduate scholarship program. And I think what makes it amazing is that there's no additional paperwork needed from our applicants, as well as the value of the scholarship and how far it can take you in terms of covering your tuition. At Lakehead, we offer a merit-based entrance award, and it's based off your academic merit. So when you apply to an undergraduate program, you're assessed for admission like you normally would be, and we calculate your GPA. And once your GPA is converted to a Canadian equivalent, we place you on our scholarship grid. Depending on where you fall, you will be entitled to a certain amount of scholarship. It starts at 75% overall average, but the higher your aggregate average goes, the more money you get. The maximum scholarship, if you're a 90% student, which is, our top academic achievers, you would get 30,000 Canadian dollars. That 30,000 is broken up over 4 years, so it's $7,500 per year. Depending on your program, that can be anywhere from 20 to 25% of your tuition costs, which is really awesome. So I'll post a link in the chat where you can see the full grid and all the terms and conditions of the scholarship. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
Awesome. And just to clarify, we will also certainly be covering the scholarship section, and then we'll go into a bit more detail about how scholarships are applied to our student accounts to help pay for the fees and whatnot. So there's a few other questions here. Just give me 1 second to field them here. So the question is, I have paid my fees for fall, but course selection is left. So I will be informed about the balance left. So that's a really great question. To answer that, when students do register for courses and our accounts office actually receives that registration, they are charged based on the registration. So for example, if you register as a part-time student for 2 or 3 courses, you will be charged individually for those courses. Whereas if you register for the full-time course equivalents, then you will be charged the full tuition fees based on your program. And our accounts office works with our enrollment services team to make sure that that happens. Registration for courses typically opens at the end of June or beginning of July, depending on what program you're entering, what year level, what level of study. So there's a lot of questions regarding that, of course. But we still have some time to wait. That doesn't mean that you can't plan for what the fees are going to be like, especially assuming that you are going to be attending full-time and taking the full course load. Those fees have already been updated on our website, as Chris mentioned. If I could ask Chris actually maybe to drop the link, or one of our Lakehead experts behind the scenes to drop the link to our tuition fees website. They'll put it in the Zoom chat right now. So there's another question, is there any insurance that is offered to international students outside of health insurance? So I know that there are additional insurances that are offered through the Lakehead University Student Union, which is Lakehead Student Union, and they also cover tuition, or pardon me, they also cover extra insurance. So for example, if I'm not mistaken, they cover prescription medication, dental, massages, that sort of stuff, whereas UHIP will cover, maybe I'll pass off to Chris to chat a bit about UHIP.
Yeah,
I know we're going to cover it in depth in one slide, but just maybe the high level overview.
So UHIP is what's considered a primary plan. It's meant to mirror the Ontario health insurance OHIP plan. So think of emergency coverage. If you visit a hospital or you go to a walk-in clinic because you're sick, emergency coverage like that, you're right, it doesn't include things like prescriptions or dental or vision. These are what would be considered a secondary plan. So all international students are automatically enrolled into UHIP, and all full-time undergraduate students, including international students, are automatically enrolled into the LUSU health and dental plan. So you really do have a broad spectrum of coverage there. The only thing I would say is that graduate students, so if you're taking a master's or PhD, you are not automatically registered into the LUSU plan. So that's something that you would have to do during the enrollment period. I think it's the month of September. Sometimes they start late in August. So you are given basic emergency medical coverage. You're also given the secondary LUSU plan, but if you're a grad student, you have to opt into it. And if you're part-time, you're also not automatically opted into LUSU plans. But I think for international students, you're generally all full-time. So.
Awesome. So that's a really great segue into our living expenses. And this also ties into the next question that I was going to ask. Is the health insurance included in the tuition fee, or is it charged separately?
You're always going to see it separately. It's not included in the tuition fee. It's separate for a few reasons, because it is a separate bill. We pay the premium up front as soon as you're registered for even just one single course. All international students are required to have it, so it's billed separately. Your tuition is it could change throughout your academic year, but your UHIP is gonna stay the same. So it is billed separately. So if you're looking at a tuition fee figure, I think we have a little note on our website underneath that just advises you that UHIP is an additional fee. So
awesome. And then while you cover some of these other details like housing, food, personal expenses, I'm going to field some more of the questions because I know that we are receiving quite a few. So I'll pass it off to Chris to cover the other fields within this slide too.
Sure. I mean, again, these are just estimates here. Housing, you can find it online as well. If you're on the Lakehead University website, there is a residence page that has the fees on them, depending on what type of accommodations you have, whether you're in a shared accommodation or a single room on campus, off campus. There's many variables there. And again, like personal expenses, food, these all depend on whether you have like a meal plan included with your residence, or whether you're purchasing your own food on yourself. But generally, this is a good summary of what you're looking at for total living expenses there.
Awesome. So we do have another question here. So there was quite a few questions actually regarding UHIP and whether it was billed separately or built into tuition fees or ancillary fees. Could you maybe, I know it was on the previous slide, just chat briefly about what ancillary fees are for students?
So ancillary fees are, just in the interest of being transparent, it just shows where all of your non-tuition fees go to. So there's certain things around the university that that the students pay for through like maintenance, like building maintenance. There's a couple capital fees on there. There's a computer fee on there that goes towards keeping the computer labs up to date, and there's a health fee on there that allows students to access the on-campus health clinic. You have to have that fee in order to see the campus clinic. There's a LUSU fee. So LUSU is your student union. As a student, you're automatically a member of the Lakehead University Student Union. So they have some fees on there as well. There are capital fees that go toward maintaining some of the facilities they have on campus. So there's a study coffee house on campus. There's the Outpost, which is a restaurant. So there are, and LUSU also the bus fee. If you're a full-time undergraduate student, you get billed the bus fee, which it's a sticker, goes on your student card, and you could use public transportation for free all the academic year long. And they also, again, like they also have their health fee as well, which is a secondary insurance plan to cover things that aren't covered under UHIP or GuardMe.
Awesome. So I know that there's quite a few questions coming up about how to make payments and kind of when the fee structures are due, all that sort of stuff. So I think moving on to the next slide is pertinent, and
Sure.
we'll answer quite a few questions by covering this slide. So I'll pass it off once again to Chris to chat about the undergraduate side of paying fees, and then we'll move into graduate, of course.
Sure. So there is a schedule of payment online right now. The due dates are going to be the same pretty much every year. For undergraduate students, the fall term, which runs from September to December, is due August 15th. So if you're only registered in the fall, your entire payment would be due by August 15th. If you're registered as a full-time student, which means you're attending the fall and winter terms, only the first installment of your full-time fees is due. And the amount of that is going to depend on what program you're in. I would recommend checking out our website because it is up to date with next year's fees. But yeah, so generally you can pay the full amount as well by August 15th, or if you want to pay in the 2 installments, that's fine too. But those are basically the 2 options we have for undergraduate students. There's 2 deadlines, and the dates are going to be constant. If it falls on like a weekend, it might be like December 16th or something, but it's generally always going to be those 2 days.
Awesome. And then I'll move it off to some of the summer fees, because I know obviously some of our students have already started courses for their spring term or will be starting courses in the next few weeks for summer.
Yeah, so spring, summer courses, they tend to run for 3 weeks in May, and then the 2-term spring courses go between May and June. So there are quite a few different. It depends on what type of class you're taking and when you're taking it, but again, it's kind of just broken down into 2 due dates. May 1st is when the spring term fees would be due, and July 1st for the summer fees. Or again, like if it falls on like a weekend, we'll bump it up a day. So I think there it says July 2nd.
So here's the final one about the structure of paying fees for graduate students, and then we'll definitely go back to the Q&A, and hopefully we've addressed quite a few of those questions already.
Yeah, so grad students, again, the first 2 terms are August 15th, December 15th. Then the spring summer term, which is combined into 1 for grad students, would be due by May 1st. So again, yeah, so pretty easy to remember. It's always going to be on our website. We put postings on my info. We send out reminder emails just to let students know that a deadline is approaching. So, but yeah, it is always going to be on our website. I just tell students, put it in your calendar on your phone. So it goes off, like gives you enough time to make your payments. So.
Perfect. So we have a really great question. Does the confirmation deposit go towards fees, or is it applied onto the accounts?
It goes towards your fees. So you'll see on your student account, if you haven't registered yet, you probably don't see your confirmation deposit. Once you do register and there's a charge to apply it against, you'll see your confirmation deposit put onto your account. It usually happens, within a few days of you seeing the charges on your student account. If you don't see it transferred, you can get in touch with the accounts office, but it does go towards student fees. So if you're thinking of making your final tuition fee in full, and I get asked this a lot, you can deduct whatever the confirmation deposit you paid from that final payment if you don't already see it on your student account. So if you're planning on prepaying before you register, you can knock, $1,000 or whatever your deposit was off.
Awesome. So the next question I'll have is for Patrick. It's with regards to scholarships for student study at the graduate level. So I'll have him cover graduate funding, graduate assistantships, and whatnot.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Jordan. Graduate funding is quite a unique process. There is funding potentially for graduate students, but a lot of the funding is dependent on the faculty and if there is funding available. It is also, a lot of the funding comes through what's called a graduate assistantship or GA, or sometimes referred to as a TA, a teaching assistantship. And this is essentially funding to assist a professor in the teaching, some grading class, or doing research. You qualify for funding, you will know when you get your offer of admission. And it's just important to connect with your faculty advisor during your admission process here at Lakehead University to talk about kind of the funding, potential funding available to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. So the next question I have, let me just scroll back to it. I want to make sure I got it here. So this student has already paid. They're going to be a first year student, of course. They've already paid their initial deposit. And they would just like kind of know what the next steps are. And they also asked, when do they have to apply for residence? So maybe I'll pass it off to Patrick to describe the next steps after you've paid your confirmation deposit, and then also highlighting the application deadline for residence.
Yeah, so after you've paid your confirmation deposit, you're really waiting for two things you're going to do. You're going to apply to residence, and you should be receiving that information through our communications in your email. But you want to apply to residence and plan your place to live on campus. And depending on your campus, there are a variety of choices: dorm rooms, apartments, and townhouses in Thunder Bay, and the dorm rooms in Aurelia. And in terms of, you just want to get your application in so you can get your preferred residence, and you should be doing that. If you paid your deposit, you could do that today. The other thing you're waiting for is course registration. So the course calendar isn't out yet. It will be out sometime in June, and registration will open with the course timetable. I do encourage everyone to register for what's called FastPass webinars to assist with course registration. Those are your kind of two big next steps. And the other thing, kind of separate from Lakehead, but is ensuring that you have the right documents to enter Canada. So entry visa and a study permit. You should be pursuing those as well if you haven't started that already.
Awesome. And then one more thing I would like to note is a really important part of the application process is if you have received a conditional letter of acceptance or offer from Lakehead, it's really important that you meet those conditions based on the deadlines that were already stated in your individual or unique offer. If you have any questions about those deadlines, if you have any questions or concerns about meeting that deadline, we are committed to working with each applicant on an individual basis. So what I do encourage you to do is reach out to the preferred department. So if you've applied to undergraduate studies, it's our undergraduate admissions team. And if you've applied to graduate studies, it's our graduate admissions team. Their contact information is in your letter already. And you can certainly reach out to them with more questions or at least for some clarification to work with them if you feel that the deadlines stated in your offer are not attainable. I know that they're being quite flexible with all of our applicants right now, given the current situation. So I certainly, once again, encourage you to reach out if you have any concerns. So the next question I have, if we need to pay 1 full year of tuition in advance to apply for the visa, can they already pay fees for fall 2020? And will they get a receipt, or will those fees show up within their student accounts?
That's a really good question. So a lot of students do come here on the student direct stream, which I think one of the requirements is to pay for 1 full year in advance. So as soon as you have an account set up, you have a student ID number, you can start making payments toward your student account. You can pay, I think, like online through, we use Western Union Global Pay to transfer funds, and it will show up on your student account on your account statement there. You get an email notification once we've received your payment, but it's not an actual receipt. If you need a receipt, it has to be requested from the accounts office or from myself. So you could send me an email, or you could email accounts@lakeheadu.ca. Just say, hey, I need a copy of my official receipt. I'm applying for my visa, and we'll send it to you. So
awesome. Thank you so much for clarifying. Alrighty, so I'm just going to read through some more questions here. So we have a good question. Ancillary fees, should they be paid every term, or is it a one payment for a full year?
Gotcha. Ancillary fees are billed in addition to every course you register for. So you don't actually register for them separately. Let's say you sign up for, Engineering 101. That's not the course code, but let's just use that. It would automatically bill you a small portion of that would be for ancillary fees, and it's relative to the number of courses you take. So let's say you pay, like, just to make it easy, the course is $1,000 and there's like $50 in ancillary fees. It would just be relative to that. So for every course you take, you're billed a set amount of ancillary fees.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I have a couple quick questions here. If we need to apply for off-campus housing, can the university help us with that? So Lakehead University does not facilitate off-campus housing arrangements. And we don't do that because simply each student picks their housing based on what their needs are and what their budget is. We certainly encourage students to follow through with some consistent processes. For example, if you're interested in an off-campus apartment or a housing option, we encourage you to connect with that landlord, potentially even set up a Zoom call, a Skype call, a FaceTime call to have them walk through the space to make sure that it is something that you are interested in renting. But certainly what we do encourage is for first-year students, when you first arrive on campus, the on-campus experience and living in residence is certainly the most supportive, and we've seen some great power to the fact that when students are living on campus, they're actually more successfully academic-wise because the access to the support systems, the access to the facilities itself are significantly more. Students living on campus and off campus can access the general university facilities the same way. Students on residence do have specialized programming that's built into that residence fee already. So there is extra programming in place for on-campus living. But I certainly encourage you, we have already met with our residence teams and we went over residence living in depth on a previous Monday meetup. So if you check out our YouTube channel and the playlist is Lakehead International Live, you can watch that recording at any time. It was about an hour long, and we spoke in great detail about what the benefits are of living on campus, what the amenities are, all that sort of stuff, and we also answered plenty of your questions too. Another question, is there townhouses in Aurelia? So the Aurelia campus does only have one option for on-campus living. It is dorm style or residence hall style. What I can speak to that is that students actually get their own private room with a full double bed, a private desk, a mini fridge, wireless internet, wired internet, a telephone, and then they share a full bathroom with only one other person, and that's, they like to call it their can-mate. So those rooms are connected through the one bathroom, whereas in our residence halls in Thunder Bay, you'll see more traditional residence halls being that a floor will share a common bathroom with a full setup there and multiple bathrooms per floor too. So there's a few more questions. Is bus passes included in the fees for international students studying or pursuing master's level courses? So as far as I know, students pursuing graduate level courses can opt in for the bus fee, and it's already at a significantly reduced value or cost to students. I believe it's roughly $110 or so. And then students who are in undergraduate programs, they are automatically enrolled in that, and those fees are already built into the ancillary fees that we've already chatted about and covered. So I'm going to flip it back to some slides here to cover a few more details. For example, here, I'll pass it off to Chris to chat about the schedule of payments for residents.
Yeah, so the residence due dates are close to, if not the same as your tuition due dates. So for your typical undergraduate student or graduate student who's living in residence, you'll have two due dates, two installment amounts. First installment, August 15th, second installment, December 15th. George and Barry, the dates are a little bit different. As you'll see, their first one would be due July 2nd, and then October 15th and January 15th for the winter term there.
Awesome. So we actually had a great question from a student. What portion of the fees has to be paid in the first installment? So I know that sounds like more of a question related to the undergraduate fee structure, just because that you can have the option of paying in two installments. So I'll flip back to that screen actually just for Chris to chat about that. Oh, sorry, it's actually upcoming. My apologies. So we will cover that in just a moment, and we'll chat about the fee structures, and we'll give you a sample of how much would be due in the first installment, for example. But otherwise, I'll pass it off to Chris to chat about how we can pay fees, how students can pay fees, because I know we've received a few questions about global pay in the Q&A already.
Good stuff. So yeah, for international bank-to-bank wire transfers, we use Western Union Global Pay. We're already set up with them. All of our bank details, our SWIFT code, it's all registered with Global Pay Western Union. It's on our website. If you're in the payment section, there's a link that'll take you right to the screen you need. It's the most student-friendly option we have. You really only need to enter your own details. So your name and address, your student ID number, and then your own personal banking details. They have ours already, and then they facilitate the transfer that way. If you have a fee owing on your account, like you can see that there's a balance owing, you can pay also online by credit card. It's a third party we use called TouchNet. You just go through My Info, make a payment. It'll take you to their web portal, and you can make your credit card payment and instantly see it on your student account. Right now, they're accepting Visa and MasterCard. So if you have a different kind of card, it may not be accepted, and I would just encourage you to get in touch with me about your other options. If you have a Canadian bank account you want to pay from, this is probably the next most common payment method. We accept payment transfers, not e-transfers, but just bank-to-bank transfers from Canadian institutions, all major Canadian banks and Ontario credit unions. To do this, you would set Lakehead University up in the pay a bill function. So you might do this already for your water bill or cell phone bill or something. You would just add Lakehead University. And then when it prompts you to enter an account number, you use your 7-digit student ID number. Those take about 2 to 3 business days from the time you submit it. Other than that, we do have an office. So when campus reopens, you can come to the accounts receivable office and you can make payments by cash. You can pay by bank draft or check. You can also, if you receive scholarships from the university or bursaries, you can apply those towards your student account. They are applied towards your student account. That's how you receive them. And if you are a sponsored student, meaning that you have somebody like your government or a business that is paying your tuition, they would have sent us or will send us a sponsorship letter that it's basically an agreement for us to invoice them for whatever tuition fees that they're going to be covering. This is something that I would encourage you, if you are a sponsor student, it's probably by your government or an institution in your country, that you contact myself or the Accounts Receivable Office just to make sure that we have all your information ready to go for the fall.
Awesome. So now moving back to the Q&A, we have quite a few questions still to go through. The first question I'll address here is regarding tuition fees. So if one student was to pay full tuition fees for this upcoming fall, and then due to travel restrictions because of the global pandemic or other reasons due to COVID-19 that they weren't able to attend this fall, what would happen to those tuition fees that they've already paid into their accounts?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's obviously something that we hope doesn't happen, but you do have a couple options. If you've already made your payment, you can defer it to another term. Like, let's say you're clear to join us in the winter or another future term. You can actually just defer your payment to that term. There's no fee for doing that. Your payment as it sits on your account would basically stay there until it is utilized, until you're able to register for courses. In the sad event that you're not able to join us, we do refund students their payments basically by reversing it. Confirmation deposits and like residence deposits are non-refundable, and there's only $100 admin fee for doing student refunds, but otherwise your full refund is sent back via the method you paid. So if you paid online by credit card, we would attempt to refund your credit card. If you sent us a wire transfer, we would reverse that back to the bank account it came from.
Awesome. And then the second part of their question was an admissions related question. So they said, of course, if they weren't able to join, say, this fall, and they were hoping to defer their offer, I know that our undergraduate team has committed to continuing that offer and continuing to offer that student with acceptance to Lakehead for a future term. It is a bit different for graduate studies. Your application could be deferred to a future term, but it would be reassessed given that current applicant pool. So that's why we are encouraging students, of course, if you do have a valid offer right now, continue on through the process of applying and getting to Lakehead. And then starting this fall, I know there's quite a few questions regarding what's happening this fall, whether courses will be in person, whether they'll be online, what that all looks like. So to answer that, I do have to let you know our senior management team is monitoring the global pandemic extremely closely. The decision about the method of courses this fall has not been made. So there has been no decision made as to whether courses will be fully in person, fully online, whether there will be a mixed model. We have, of course, already committed to offer full course offerings this fall. But like I said, the decision as to what delivery method that will be has not been made yet. I hope to hear back from the university within the next few weeks here, and we'll certainly know more. What I can say though is for our applicants and for those on our mailing list, as well as following us on our social media, we will be posting those sort of major announcements and updates. So I certainly encourage you, if you're not already following our social medias, to follow us on one of them, and those updates, like I said, will be posted. We also have a website dedicated to the current situation, so it is lakeheadu.ca/about/coronavirus. And all of our major announcements, updates, frequently asked questions are populated on that website already, so students can certainly explore that. Speaking to our previous question regarding fees, refunds, all of our policies and procedures that are currently in effect due to the current situation, all that information can also be found on that website too. So we have a great question regarding this current situation. Sending courier to the university is not possible. Because of that, the application status is showing incomplete. So for the students that are showing incomplete, what we certainly encourage you, whether you're at the undergraduate or graduate level, is to upload unofficial documents to your MyInfo account. And with those documents, you have to either scan a copy or at least take a high quality photo. Our admissions team can then use those unofficial documents in the interim to evaluate your application and move forward with that. And then, for example, if with your unofficial documents, they were able to extend an offer to you, you would then be required to send the official documents. But like I previously mentioned, our admissions team are being very flexible with all of our applicants regarding those deadlines to submit final documentation. So I'm just reading through some more questions. So there's a question, all visa offices are closed in India. Is there any idea as to when visa offices will open for biometrics? So that's a great question. What we have seen in some countries around the world who were affected by the global pandemic sooner than others, we've actually started to see their economies open back up, and visa offices, or as we like to call them, back offices, they have already started to open and they are processing applications. Correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, the study permit and visa application can be done fully online, except of course the biometrics. I'll let you chime in though.
Yeah, no, that's correct. You can go to the Canadian government website and submit your TRV, your temporary residence visa, and your study permit application online, and it's a digital submission of most documents, and you can proceed your visa application to a point digitally. However, one of the things you will have to do, as you said, is provide biometrics. And as the world reopens, biometric processing, the VACs will reopen. In some countries, they're closed for now. And I'll post a link that gives you kind of what the status of the VACs are in your country, so you can check that as things start to reopen. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And you'll post that link in the Zoom chat. So if you are joining us on Facebook Live, or if you're watching this as a recording, you can certainly find that information by visiting lakeheadu.ca/international. There's a Future Students tab, and then there is a section dedicated to immigration. And you can certainly find the links that Patrick is mentioning on that website as well. So I'm just reading through some more questions here. Another question, when will it be determined the method of delivery for classes this fall? As of course the student acknowledges there are various factors affecting that decision. So like I said, our senior management team is monitoring this situation extremely closely, and they are trying to make the most informed decision that is of going to address the #1 concern for Lakehead University, and that's keeping our students, our faculty, and our staff safe. And so right now it's simply too early to say what the delivery method will be for this fall, but they are already having those conversations, they're already working through those processes, and they're evaluating several different options. And I can let you know that, like I said before, if you are an applicant, if you are on our social medias, if you're on our mailing list, those announcements will be sent out as soon as they are made, as well as on the coronavirus website, lakeheadu.ca/about/coronavirus. Those major updates will also be published online too. So we have a question, I would like to register for courses when they open, and I've registered for FastPass already. Awesome, I'm very happy to hear that you've registered for FastPass. I have a conditional offer that can be made unconditional once I send my transcripts. However, as it stands, I cannot send them as of yet. Can I still register for courses in June even though I have a conditional offer? So to my knowledge, for undergraduate students, you can register for courses when you do have a conditional offer, provided that you've already paid your confirmation deposit. For graduate students, you will be required to meet all of your conditions prior to registration opening. You will also need to pay your confirmation deposit. If you have, Patrick, is there an addition there?
Yeah, there's a small caveat there. With undergraduate students, if your condition is an English language proficiency test result, you do need to submit that prior to registration. So unofficial transcripts won't stop you from registering, but if you are requiring an IELTS, a TOEFL, or a DET test to waive your English language condition, you will need to provide that prior to registration.
Awesome, thank you for noting that. And like I said before, if you have any questions for our admissions teams, if you're concerned about the deadline stated in your offer, if you're concerned about sending documents, I certainly encourage you to connect with them directly based on what level of study you're pursuing. We also have every Wednesday, we have the Wednesday weekly admissions update, where we have our team from undergraduate and graduate join us and answer your questions related to that admissions process and the application and what the next steps are. So I certainly encourage you to also join us live on Wednesdays if you do have any pressing questions. So one student asked, could we kind of elaborate on what a sponsorship is? So I'll pass that off to Chris to kind of elaborate briefly on what a sponsorship is.
Sure, thanks. The sponsorship means that as a student, basically you're not the person who's paying your fees. Like if it's almost always going to be if you're sponsored by a government, like if your home country has a scholarship program that sends students from your country to Canada or possibly other countries to go to school. So it would be that basically that there's another institution it's more likely that your government that is paying your tuition, and it's not that simple. We receive a sponsorship letter or a financial agreement that just basically lists the fees that they're going to be responsible for paying, and they do that because that we invoice your sponsor instead of the student. So you'll see the fees that are covered under your sponsorship be taken off of your student account, and now they're being paid by your home government.
Awesome. So just be mindful of time. We have about 10 minutes left for today's webinar. So we'll start chatting a bit more about the popular methods, and then we'll dive into some other slides as well. I certainly want to keep some time to answer questions. So just keep in mind, we'll be back to the question period in just a moment, but I'll pass off to Chris to cover this section.
Okay, I'll go through this quickly because I did kind of touch on them earlier. Global Pay, Western Union. If you're planning on paying from your bank account, it's probably the best way to transfer money from one country to us. You pay in your home currency. You know the final amount you're going to be paying at the time you hit send. It has a great interface for Lakehead, so we can actually see your payments and track them for you if you have questions about the status of them. So like, let's say you sent a payment from Western Union Global Pay, a few days ago, I can see what stage it's at. So it gives a bit of peace of mind for students who are sending quite large amounts of money overseas. So that's why the main reason we recommend that. Plus we have a lot of support with them. They have their own student support office that all they do all day is help students who have questions about sending money, and it's a great resource for us to have. Next would be a credit card through PayPal. That's a popular one because it's instantaneous, and it's pretty much the only option to pay by credit card. We don't accept credit card personally in our office, so this is the main way you would pay by Visa or MasterCard. And if, let's say you have a fee, you want to pay it right away, get it over and done with, it updates on your statement of account on My Info instantly once your payment goes through. So that's a great one to use as well if you need to make a payment quickly. Other than that, I would say most students, at least the returning students in their second or third year, by that point have a Canadian bank account. If you want to pay from there, it is relatively easy. Again, you add Lakehead University as a bill payment option. Use your 7-digit student ID number as the account number. We're with all the major banks, Royal Bank, TD, Scotia, all the big Canadian banks, and all Ontario credit unions. So,
awesome. So like I said, we're going to cover scholarships. So this kind of covers the method of applying scholarships to the student account. So I'll pass off to Chris to cover that.
So when you're an undergraduate student and you receive a scholarship, it's put onto your account usually within the first week of September. So I know it's kind of confusing because the due date is August 15th. So I think the main question I get regarding this is, well, how do I make my payment then? So by August 15th, you should pay the amount you see on your student account minus the amount of your scholarship that you're receiving. So if you're receiving $2,500 from the university, you're not going to see that until probably the first or second week of September. And you would just basically pay the amount you see minus the amount of your scholarship. After August 15th, you should see only the amount owing on your student account should be the amount of the scholarship you're going to be receiving, if that's of any help. it can get a little complicated. By all means, if you're curious or you have questions about it, you can contact the accounts office by email, or we're still receiving voicemails at this point. So, or you can try to get us on Google Chat. But basically, you don't receive the scholarships. It goes onto your student account at the university. If you, like, let's say you paid your tuition in full and you have this credit on your student account from your scholarship, you can request that to be refunded to your account, to your bank account.
Awesome. And I do have a slide dedicated to that. So this is an example of computer science for the undergraduate level. So the total tuition fees was $25,000, and the scholarship they received was $7,500. So the first installment of that tuition fee would have been $13,156.07. So they actually, you take the scholarship and you divide it by 2, which is $3,750. So you take that first installment less half of your scholarship, and that amount that you would have to pay by August 15th would be $9,406.07. Your second installment would be the other half of your tuition. And then, of course, that second half of the scholarship would then be applied in the second term for the December 15th, 2020 deadline. And again, the smaller number there, $9,406.06, would then be the total amount due by December 15th. But I certainly encourage, just like Chris said, that if you do have questions or concerns, if you know you're getting a scholarship, but you're not too sure about what your final amount is going to be, of course, connect with us and we're happy to assist you. I know I'll pass it off to Chris to chat about master's and PhD and payroll deductions.
Gotcha. So if you're a master's or a PhD student and you have a graduate assistantship, you're like an employee. You are an employee of the university, so you receive payments for your work as a GA. If you want your GA payments to go towards your tuition, you need to obtain a form from the Graduate Studies Office. I think it's called like a funding form. And it has a breakdown of each term that you have your GA. It gives you the total amount you're receiving for that. It also will include any bursaries or grants or any other funding that you're receiving. Once you have that funding form, you bring it to the accounts receivable office, or you email the accounts receivable office, and we set you up. It's through human resources, so your graduate payments will come onto your student account instead of into your bank account. So let's say you have, I think they're usually around $10,000 for the full year. Those payments that you would get spread out between September and April. Every 2 weeks, you'll see a new credit go onto your student account. That's your GA payment. That's going to help pay down the balance. So what you as a student would be responsible for paying is whatever's not covered by that GA. If your tuition's, say $20,000, your GA is 10, then you as a student are responsible for paying the 10. Even if it hasn't hit your student account yet, we have that agreement that they're going to go onto your account.
Perfect. And the email that students are requested to send that information to is at the bottom of your screen. So gstudent@lakeheadu.ca is the main email for our Faculty of Graduate Studies, and they can certainly help you through that process as well. So next, I would love to pass off to Chris to cover UHIP and the health insurance plan.
Gotcha. So UHIP it's mandatory for all international students. So even if you have insurance or you want to buy your own insurance, UHIP, it's ministry mandated. All international students have it. The exception of if you are being sponsored by your home government and the government requests that you attend with their insurance instead of UHIP. But that's literally the only exception, is that if you're being sponsored by your government. And even then, there are certain criteria that their plan would have to meet. So probably the best thing to do is, if you have any questions, if you're a sponsored student, just email me directly and I can let you know. Because a lot of it has to do with what's included in the policy. So UHIP, it costs, as of right now, $636 for the year. That's from September to August. Biggest question I get is, how do I get UHIP? How do I know how to obtain it? Where do I register for it? You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is register. Once you've registered for your very first class, you're automatically going to be enrolled into UHIP as an international student. You'll see the charge show up on your student account, and then around September, usually the first week of September, you'll receive your card via your Lakehead University email.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So next, talking about statement accounts and how fees show up and how all that looks for the student end, we'll cover this quickly, and then we'll use the last few minutes to answer some questions. So I'll pass over to you, Chris, one more time to cover the next few slides.
Thanks. So what I would say to you listening, if you haven't been on My Info yet, if you haven't gone onto the student tab, there's a section called My Financial Profile. Basically, everything that regarding the finances of your student account will be there. Things like your account statement, which shows all your fees that you've registered for, all the payments you've made, all the scholarships you've received. There's tax information on there as well. So it's a good resource for you as a student. If you do go into My Info and under the student tab, you'll see a thing, I think it's called View My Account or My Account Details. And I think we have a slide that the next, yeah, there you go. So My Financial Profile. That's also where you would make an online credit card payment as well. If you haven't paid your confirmation deposit, you could pay it through there as well. But basically, once you go through here, I think the next slide has the, yeah, so that's how you would go to make a payment there. But you could also view your account statement, which is just a list of all the charges and all the payments that are on there. And this is how you would go through to make your credit card payment. So
Awesome.
My Financial Profile, it's a great resource. Check it out.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So the My Account statement that you were just referencing, that first one was the, correct me if I'm wrong, it's called the My Statement of Account, or is that My Account Details, this one?
That looks like account details because the account statement's on the next page.
Okay, so then the statement accounts. So you'll see a screenshot actually on the right there of what a statement of accounts was. I believe that was from last year. So you'll see all of the different fees and individualized payments. So it actually gives you a good idea exactly. So there's the tuition cost on there. There's any awards on there. There's payments tracked on there, but also the individual ancillary fees that are required for you to pay. Those are also individually billed on the charges side. So you can see the total amount due, all that sort of stuff. And to reiterate, if you do have any questions about that information, of course, we encourage you to connect with us directly, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. So things to consider. This is the last slide, and then I'll use the last couple minutes to answer a few more questions. So we certainly encourage you to regularly check your Lakehead University email. That's where we serve all of our main communications to you as a incoming student. Any announcements, any communications from your faculties, program chairs, even your professors once you get to the registration process will be communicated only through your Lakehead University email. They will not use your personal email to communicate some of those details or some of that information. So we certainly encourage you to start accessing that account as soon as possible, starting to get familiar with it. Also making payments according to the deadline dates to avoid late fees. We acknowledge that given the current situation, of course, there are unique situations where students aren't always to make payments based on the timelines. At that point, we certainly encourage you to reach out to us and connect with us directly. But we know that we already have such a wide variety of payment methods that we're happy to help you explore which option is accessible based on your current location around the world. And last but not least, visiting My Info regularly for important updates. So like Chris mentioned, when you're on your My Info and the My Financial Profile, gives you a full outline of all of the financial details related to your student accounts, but also just general updates from the university. Go through your My Info account. And that's also the portal, the platform that you will use for the registration process for undergraduate students. For graduate students, a bit more unique based on your program, and that will all be communicated through your Lakehead University email. So once again, I certainly encourage you to be on that email. So last but not least, I know that we're just past 11, so I'll answer a few questions just because I had already marked them live, but otherwise If we weren't able to get to your questions today, I certainly encourage you to reach out to us directly at welcome@lakeheadu.ca, and we'll be happy to answer that. So the last few questions, I have a conditional offer, but I have not gotten my final marks yet. What can I do because I cannot apply for residence? So if you do have a conditional offer, as long as you make the confirmation deposit, so you pay that confirmation deposit, you will be eligible to apply for residence. If you have any issues with that process, I encourage you to connect directly with us, with our residence office, or if it's an issues with making the confirmation deposit, of course, connect with our accounts office. Another question for Chris: do we need mail money order or bank drafts to be sent to a specific address?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to mail anything to the university, and currently we are still receiving mail in the finance office, it's just less frequently. But you would just use our 955 Oliver Road address and put attention accounts receivable office.
Awesome. And our full address is listed online, as well as it's listed on the accounts receivable website. So if you do need the full address with postal code, city, all that sort of information is online. And like Chris said, we are receiving mail at the university still for all of our departments. There are certain departments that aren't able to access that mail, or in the case of accounts receivable, it sounds like they're not able to access it as frequently as we used to. But I want to encourage students that if they do have any documents that are final official that need to be sent regarding their application, regarding their admissions, all that sort of stuff can still be sent directly to us. So another question for students that are pursuing Masters in Computer Science: is January 2021 intake available? Is there any chance that programs can be deferred to that? So for computer science at the master's level, as of right now, we do not have a January intake being offered. We have certainly had discussions with our computer science department to see if that is a potential option. But right now it's too early to say what that's going to look like until we know more about what's going to happen for the delivery method for fall courses, of course. Another question we have: can first year students apply for on-campus jobs? Great question. Students certainly can apply for on-campus jobs and off-campus jobs as soon as they have their Canadian SIN number. So when they arrive on campus, we typically have our Service Ontario, come onto our campus and hold SIN sessions so that they can provide our international students with SIN numbers, which is what's required to then proceed into the job and the working environment. There's on-campus jobs, off-campus jobs, and we do have the Student Success Center and the Career Zone to help you find those jobs too. So I certainly encourage you to go online, go on our website, and learn more about the Student Success Center and how we assist students in finding those jobs. So I have one more question here that I marked, and then we will have to wrap it up because I know I've already held our special guests here past the time, but I'll wrap it up shortly here. So this student: I would like to register for courses when they open. I have registered for FastPass. Can I still register for? Oh, I'm so sorry. I've already answered this question. So the question was regarding registering for courses with a conditional offer letter. And like Patrick had mentioned, you can register for courses at the undergraduate level with a conditional offer letter, provided the condition is not for English language proficiency requirements. And for graduate students, that is a little more unique with that question. So I certainly encourage you to reach out to gstudent@lakeheadu.ca. So that answers all of our questions. We covered an enormous amount of ground today. I'll remind everyone to follow us on our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We're posting quite frequently on there with regular updates as well as sneak peeks for the university. We certainly know that exploring your campuses is an important part of the decision process. So you can take a virtual tour at lakeheadu.ca/tours. Otherwise, I think that wraps up pretty nicely. I want to thank every one of our viewers for joining us today, and I also want to thank our special guests for joining us and our Lakehead experts behind the scenes for answering all the questions. And I encourage you to join us on Instagram Live tomorrow, where we are going to meet Ashvi, who is a current psychology student from India. Otherwise, I'll end it there and thank everyone once again for joining us. Bye for now.